also shifting focus now. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say mutual funds? I'm guessing, like the rest of us, we've also grown up hearing mutual funds sahi hai, a tagline that sticks out. India's mutual fund industry is on a massive growth path as Indians become more aware of opportunities and the risk of investing in capital market. The mutual fund industry has now crossed 50 lakh crore mark as of December of 2023. The trend line is clear. People are investing more through the mutual fund route. The increase in mutual fund investments in the country has also in fact coincided with the growing penetration of the internet and the consumption of social media. In fact, the onset of social media and wider dissemination of financial information through digital media seems to have played a very significant role in shaping investment decisions. Yet, when compared to the wireless data usage per subscriber per month, which has clocked nearly 55% growth rate since 2018, mutual fund folios have only grown at 15%. The data points to a massive, huge potential for mutual funds to grow with effective use of social media. In fact, Edelweiss, in a new report called Social Media Sahi Hai, says that the right use of social media can amplify mutual fund penetration and ensure more people get to know more about mutual fund and its growth path. To understand the report better, joining us on the show is Radhika Gupta, CEO MD of Edelweiss Mutual Fund. Radhika, absolute pleasure speaking to you here on News9. Thank you very much for taking time out. Quoting to you one of the excerpts from the report that suggests that it appears that people influencing decisions on investments, at least on mutual fund, on YouTube has grown by an upward of 8 to 10 lakh subscribers, and the data is even bigger when compared to social media sites like Facebook and Instagram. At a time like this, where does one really draw the line between finfluencers who do not really have the right degree to impart that information about mutual fund, while also, getting to know more about mutual funds through people who are registered advisors to do that?
And I think thank you for having me. And I think that fine line is exactly the reason that we put out this report. On one hand, you have to realize that social media is inevitable. More and more consumers that are new to the financial services industry, capital markets, mutual funds are young, and young people are spending their time online, 60-70% of it on social media platforms. So can you avoid them accessing social media platforms, forming opinions on social media platforms, including financial and investment decisions? You can't avoid it. So that is that. And fundamentally, we believe there is nothing wrong with social media. In fact, social media, when used the right way, is good and it is inevitable. So that is one side. The second side of it is, of course, the kind of content that's being put out about social media. Now, financial services, investing, this is not beauty, this is not consumer products. I think the degree of seriousness that this content and this storytelling carries is high, because it's finally people's hard-earned money. And our hope is that certified practitioners, whether it's mutual fund distributors, registered investment advisors, people who are qualified to give financial advice, who can disclose their incentives, actually realize the power of social media and come out and create that content online, because people are consuming content. So there's a space for people to create the right kind of people to create the right kind of content.
Hi Radhika, good evening. Karthik Malhotra here. It's wonderful to have you back on News9 Live. I just want to understand from you, while storytelling, content creation seem to be very specialized fields, and that has what has propelled a lot of influencers and finfluencers to actually go online and amass the sort of subscriber base and follower base that they have. How does the end viewer at the end of the day really decipher that the person giving the advice is a registered qualified investment advisor or not? Because creating content also, like advising on mutual funds, is unlikely to be everybody's cup of tea.
No, I agree, but I've also realized, and outside of sort of being a mutual fund CEO, I do create content personally. in my bid to educate consumers. Our brand is perhaps the most followed mutual fund brand on social media as Edelweiss Mutual Fund. And while I think content creation is specialized, I think authenticity is extremely important in content creation. Now, it's not something that a certified practitioner can't learn, right? Just like we learn digital marketing, just like we learn so many other skill sets, I don't think it's something a certified practitioner can't learn. So I don't think that that's an excuse for a practitioner to say, hey, this is specialized, this is not surgery, right? मैं ये नहीं कर सकता. You can do it. I think for the consumer, it's very important, as you said, to check who they're creating, who they're consuming content from. A lot of the content, financial content created online is really clickbait content, double your money in, 3 years, 5 stocks that will give you returns, 100% returns in a few days. And this is the kind of content that is clickbait, but you really have to ask yourself 2 questions. Who's creating that content? Go out and check, is that person, do they carry any SEBI registration? Today, any registered certified practitioner, details about them will be available online. So find that out. And secondly, what are their incentives? So if they're recommending you a financial product, are they disclosing, are they getting anything on the side from that financial product? This is something I urge all consumers of content online to do.
Okay, Radhika, at the same time, I think part of the responsibility, while SEBI has been a little active, if not overactive, in calling out the fallacies of influencers who are not registered investment advisors, but do you think part of the solution also lies with intermediary platforms like Meta, like YouTube, like X, to put out those disclaimers that the advice coming from somebody who's not registered is actually, it should come with a sticker that says that this is not an authentic finfluencer. Like is the mandate now for synthetically generated content using AI or deepfake. Should these platforms be held accountable for distributing information that eventual users can become victimized to under the guise of true financial advice?
This is a very tricky one. The theoretical answer says yes, if you are a platform, then you have a responsibility to ensure that your content is quality, is with the right practices. In practice, you have many questions here. You have the question of, can a platform like Meta, can a platform like X or Instagram or whatever it is, can it curb freedom of speech? No. Is it going to be able to go out and do checks on who is registered and who is not? I mean, most of these are global companies. Can they do India-specific checks to see that XYZ has a current license, XYZ doesn't have a current license? Perhaps some disclaimer that if it is financial content, please take it from someone who is qualified, etc. Perhaps some amount of basic disclaimers can be done. This is harder said than done.
Okay. Absolutely. Very harder said than done. Coming back to your report, and we have a lot of questions to ask you, Radhika, in the limited time that we have from you. I think one of the questions that a lot of people would be juggling with at this point, and we've discussed this, is on one hand, you have the regulator trying to go after influencers, warning people to be wary of all sorts of information that you see made available to you readily online, what to believe, what not to believe. Are we not putting a lot of importance and thrust on investors per se? Because when we look at all the search words that your report has also put out, people are Googling things like SIPs to invest in, mutual funds to invest in, how much money to invest in. So are we not, by the way of, prompting people to look at these influencers, putting a lot of responsibility on their plate as to what they should do, they should not do, where should they go and look out for when it comes to, registered investment advisors? How can they actually verify that the information that they are getting is true, reasonable, and non-malicious?
Are we putting too much onus on influencers? Are we making it hard? I don't think so. In financial services, whether you run a bank, whether you run an asset management company, whether you run a fintech, whether you run an NBFC, whether you run an insurance company, these businesses are highly regulated. Ask me, I run one of them. And the more retail your businesses are, the more they touch the common consumer, the more regulated they are. Because again, selling mutual funds is not the same as selling headphones or food or beauty products. it's not a one-time product. It's a potentially long-term service that you're buying, and there's no product that you're buying. You're actually buying a promise of future returns. So are we putting too much onus? No, because anybody who's made a career or an institution in financial services has combated and is successfully dealing with regulation and knows that regulation is a part of doing business. So I think if you are in the financial influence space, it should be thought of as a part of doing business. I actually think the regulator's stance on this is the right one. They are doing what they can do. So, they can't curb freedom of speech, but at least they're saying if you're a SEBI registered intermediary, don't go out and use an influencer. I'm again saying, I think the problem is not going to be solved by, you can't blame influencers entirely, right? One of the reasons people seek out influencers is because they're the only ones creating content online. And to be honest, there are some very good influencers. I'm not saying the whole lot of influencers is bad. They're good ones, they're not so good ones. The fact that they're using social media is very smart. And, it's a platform, it has a voice. What we need is more high quality content creators. You need more certified practitioners in the industry to come out and use social media platforms to create content that is more responsible. So the solution is not doing away with social media.
Okay, and you're a very active social media user. You are actually in the news for your effective use of social media every now and then. To a lot of other practitioners who want to effectively use social media, share some of the tips, tricks with us. How do you really do it? What is your idea? What do you, whenever you're posting out something, do you really have a social media strategy in place?
No, and I think social media should be authentic. I mean, one of my own reasons for using social media and for us as a brand was that, as an emerging brand, you don't have the luxury that at least 6-7 years ago, we didn't have the luxury of large budgets, and it's hard to get your voice heard when you're a smaller brand. And social media became a very powerful way, and there was not too much competition on social media. And it's also a way to reach out to a much younger consumer set. I think our learnings are a few. One, be authentic. Authenticity is really important, especially when you're talking to a young consumer. So if you're always talking about trying to sell something, that's a problem. But if you're trying to give advice, I mean, for instance, every time I talk about investing for your children, it's something I think about a lot because I'm a young mother. It seems to resonate with people because it's something on people's minds. So just authentic content. I think the second is avoid being sensational with financial content. Extremes are best avoided, and the reality is most of us know less than we think. So just being a little humble and less extreme. And the third is some frequency of content creation. I mean, content creation is hard work, so you have to do it with some amount of frequency.
Okay, and talking specifically, since you mentioned being a young mother, talking specifically about the most recent post that you put out there about opening your SIP accounts in the name of your children. And I think from what I read in the comments in that thread, not a lot of people knew that you can actually have a PAN card made in your child's name immediately after getting the Aadhaar. So how do you sort of, respond to this naivety still existing in a large mass of investors who actually still are unable to come to grips with what is the best way to invest for their children?
To be frank, I was really surprised. I mean, I had put out this tweet on investing for children, and the most common questions I'm getting are operational questions. Till today, there is a myth that you can't get a PAN card for a child, that you can't open a bank account, that you can't invest in any mutual fund except a children's gift fund. All three are false. Right after you get the birth certificate for a child and you get the Aadhaar, you can get a PAN card. In fact, I argue with children, it's a lot easier because they don't have changed addresses and mismatched signatures. They're very basic, right? They've just come into the world. The second is all banks do open accounts. One of the things that can get better is a lot of AMC sites don't allow you to create new folios online. But RTA platforms, KFin, CAMS, all of these sites allow you to do that. The point is, if you get the basic paperwork done, it's actually doable. I think people are just not aware of these things. And that's why I think people need to create that awareness.
So what can be done at a society level? Because we still don't have investing as a curriculum anywhere in school, anywhere in college. And I think most adults, and pretty much guilty as charged, we discover the power of compounding, the power of investing pretty late in life. And the whole idea of compounding is lost by then. So how do we inculcate this culture of investing despite the investment AUM reaching 50 lakh crore rupees? I think we have miles to go. How do we bridge that gap, Radhika?
It's so important to bridge that gap because you don't realize that, I probably started investing when I was 21, 22, that because I went to a business school. I hadn't heard of the word equity, to be honest, till I was 18, 19, and I started going to business school. Now, some of you know that I made a guest appearance on Shark Tank India this year. I was surprised to realize that one of the largest constituencies of Shark Tank India watchers is 8 to 10-year-old kids. Now, regardless of whether you like the show or don't like the show, remember, if someone at the age of 8, 9, 10, 11 is watching a show like that, they are growing up with the word equity. So between things like Shark Tank, between things like social media, our kids are already forming opinions on markets, on investing, on business very subconsciously. So personal finance actually is ready to be a middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade subject because kids are not alien to this. And their attitudes and habits on money are already being shaped. They can be shaped much better through formal education. So actually the case for formal education in middle school is much higher. That's the second reason I keep saying parents should have that portfolio for children, because at least our hope is that as our child grows up, we run him through his SIP account, we tell him what he has, we use his mutual fund folio to help him inculcate values, the importance of money, the habit of saving. SIP is a great concept to learn that if you're earning an income, however small, save some of it, invest some of it. So we're also hoping to communicate values, monies, and eventually personal investing through the child's own portfolio. I also think it's a great way, I wrote this in my tweet, to rethink our whole think about gifting. Gifting is so important in Indian culture. Every time when a child is born, birthdays, you get gifts. And I keep joking, my house has too many strollers and too many ball pools. Why don't we just start gifting units of this so that, you can inculcate these habits in small actions in day-to-day life.
Okay, Radhika, we are supposed to let you go, but I have one last question. There's another tweet of yours that is actually gaining a lot of social media momentum, and you weighed in heavily on a logical investment versus buying a home. I happen to be the right sort of audience for you, and taking me as the case study. I'm in my 30s. I don't have a home just as yet. I am conflicted between saving and buying that home. Should I buy or not buy a home? There are a lot of conversation and debates around it.
And as a cohort 10 years advanced from Shweta, I am exactly the opposite. Have I done the right thing or the wrong thing, logically speaking?
The real answer is there is no judgment. The real answer is, does a home hold value for you? Like, I know a lot of people for whom, what is a home? It's a place to live. Emotionally, it's a place I can do up. I did my son's nursery the way I wanted to. It's a sense of security. Now, none of these things I'm saying are logical things. If you are an emotional person and these things hold value to you, then yes, you should buy a home. It has emotional value. I know a lot of people who will say, Radhika, this is a truckload of nonsense, and they don't believe in the emotional value. If you don't believe in the emotional value, just like I don't believe cars have emotional value, I believe cars are a dead investment. I don't like driving. So cars to me don't make sense as a financial investment, and I have no emotional connection with them, right? So the right answer is, if a home has emotional value to you, don't think about the finance math, don't think about the Excel, go buy a home. But if it doesn't hold emotional value to as a financial decisions, in most cases, the rental yield math doesn't make sense.
Okay, so that is understandable for the first house. That's understandable, Radhika, for the first house. And do you mean to say a second house, a house that you're not going to live in, should not be invested in, logically speaking?
Read between the lines. And now you'll joke, I'm a CEO. I do have a preference for liquid investments after a primary home.
Now, for an influencer, how do I as an audience make out, is there a vested interest or not in what you're saying, Radhika?
I've been very honest and given you the disclosure. I am a mutual fund CEO, but I genuinely believe with real estate, and I come from Delhi where I think 30 years ago, wealth was measured in property. What people don't realize, I see too many cases where people are asset rich and cash poor because they've got too many investments stuck in real estate, and they underestimate the cost of maintenance and the transaction costs in selling. So I am not saying real estate is bad, don't troll me on that. I'm just saying that for non-primary homes, you have to really think about, and I've tweeted about this very extensively, sometimes got trolled, you've got to think about the cost of ownership of something versus just having an NAV that you can sell. I mean, you can't, if I own a 10 crore home, I can't sell 10 lakhs of it. If I own a 10 crore mutual fund, I can sell 10 lakhs of it tomorrow.
Okay, and one final question before we let you go. Sorry for taking a minute extra, Radhika, but we are in election season. We are seeing an unprecedented bull run in Indian markets. Is the momentum going to continue once the new government, whichever government comes to power, comes to office in the month of June?
Look, elections, I think, are great media conversation, but I think their impact on markets is really for that year and is often short-lived. And I think I'm not going to speak politics, but I think that the next decade, the current decade, is a phenomenal decade for India. The confluence of a young population, entrepreneurship, and policy and infrastructure coming together are very good ones, and that's the momentum that is driving the rally. Now you can argue some segments are overvalued, some stocks, I don't want to get into that. Fundamentally, markets move because of underlying companies and earnings growth, and I think it will be a great decade for earnings growth, and this is a supportive policy environment, so we all hope that continues.
Radhika Gupta, absolute pleasure. I have to stop Karthik from asking another question. Thank you very much for joining in. Hope to have you back very soon on News9 once again.
Thank you.
Well, shifting focus now, Hyundai Motor